Hello guys, my name's Owen, I'm a Christian, and in this series I'm reading through the Quran surah by surah from the start to the end. This is now second episode, so in the first episode, the previous one, we covered Surah 1. If you haven't seen that, I'll go put a link down in the description so you can go and watch that. Everyone who has watched that, really appreciate it. Got some really great comments from people on that video, so yeah, let's just continue with it, and without any more messing around, let's just jump straight into the video. So in that first video, that was sort of getting a initial understanding of what Islam was about and trying to understand what the basic premises. Okay, and that's why I was just sort of I wanted to check my understanding with you guys, so I put a few sentences on there, and you guys helped in the comments and the email. I got a few WhatsApps as well. People just letting me know that yep, this is how it works. It's how it works. So a couple of my understandings that I had from the last video that I wanted people to check was first of all the Quran being incorruptible and the Word of God, and it doesn't need to be changed from modern context. That was correct. That got confirmed by everyone. Also, the Prophet being a perfect example for Muslims. That was right. That got confirmed by everyone. So it's good that I understood those ones. The next one was about Allah's names are for His use only and cannot be assigned to any of His creatures. That's how I understood it, but it's kind of like that. Okay, so I got sent a couple of links by some people. Really appreciate that. And basically, the names fall into like two categories. So you got the what we covered last time was the 99 different names for Allah, and they fall into two categories allegedly. So there's names which belong only to Allah. So for example, something like the most merciful, I'm guessing that belongs only to Allah, or something like the first or the last or the omnipotent. I believe it's those kind of names, the controller, which could only belong to Allah. And you can only use those if you use the word abd in front of it, which sort of abd means slave in Arabic. Okay. And then, from my understanding, the second category of names is names which can point to human qualities. And these can be used without the definite article. So, just again, to check my understanding, I sort of did an exercise of like putting together a couple of names. So, Allah obviously means the God. Apparently, it actually comes from Al. And if you can see here, from my understanding, it looks like Al, As, Ar, and like names like that. That's the in Arabic. So it's Al Ilah, and that basically means the God Allah. You couldn't call yourself that because that's obviously one of his names, and it belongs only to Allah. However, you can do Abdallah or Abdullah because that just means slave of the God, and that is okay. Okay, Ar-Rahman means the most merciful. You couldn't call yourself that because that belongs to Allah only. However, you could call yourself Abdul Rahman or Abdur Rahman was another spelling I saw because that would mean slave of the most merciful. And then now this comes into the second category, which is, for example, Al Hakim. You couldn't call yourself the wise because that's a name of Allah. You could call yourself Hakim because you can still be wise. It's just you're not the wise. Okay. And similarly, you could do Abd al Hakim, which is slave of the wise. And same with Al Latif, the gentle. You couldn't call yourself that because you're not the gentle. That's what Allah is. You can be gentle, and so your name could be like named after like gentle Latif, but it can be Al Latif, can be and it also could be Abd al Latif, slave of the gentle. That's my understanding of names. Okay, I think I've now understood that. But if I have still made any mistakes, drop that down in the comments below. But I think that's how the names of Allah work. Okay, so you can't use his names. Some of them you can use without the definite article, but otherwise you'd have to put an abd to mean slave in front of. There's actually really interesting when I was researching this just for this bit here. There's like this whole principle of like theophoric names, which is basically like names which mean this where they come off the name of a god. Basically, apparently Theophoros means literally bearing or carrying a god. So I was just having a look at these. This was just really interesting to see. So I actually did Greek for GCSE, so I can actually like read some of these. So for example, Theophilus, Theos is God, and then Philos is love. So like philosophy is Philos, love, and Sophia, wisdom, love of wisdom. Right, so another one is Theophobos. Phobos is fear, Theos is God. Timotheos, you have like Timer, which means honor, and Theos, which means God. And then, oh yeah, this one as well. So Christodoulos, obviously, is Christ, and then doulos means slave or servant. So Christodoulos means slave or servant of Christ. So that was just really cool. When I was just randomly just researching some stuff, I found those, and that's where there was this Wikipedia page as well, which explains all the Abdul, slave of God, and all this sort of stuff. And that's just a picture of my Greek textbook. So yeah, I did Greek for GCSE, and the New Testament is written in Greek. So this is like because I used to be completely atheist, right? I was near the end of year 13 when I first found out Christianity. If I'd known like this, I would have done it for A level, man, because that's so cool. But I quit it at GCSE, And so it's like I can roughly see things in Greek. So I can read the whole thing. So this is an arche en ho logos kai ho logos en proston theon kai theos en ho logos hutos en arche proston theon pantadi autu egeneto kai choris autu egeneto ude hen ho gegonen. It's been a while, but that's like I can read it and then I can like kind of translate it. So that's like in the beginning was the word, and the word hologos is the word. That's RK, which you then put it in the dative to make it in the beginning. And the word was pros. We got taught that was towards the God, and the word was towards the God. But I believe in modern Bibles it's translated as like with, and God was the word. He was in the beginning towards the God. And then this is where it starts to get ropey. Like that first bit I can do, but then here it's like panta is neuter plural, so that means all things. Egenetor, the e at the start means it's past tense. So I believe, and that eto means it's passive. So it's going to be like all things were made on account of him. Like all things were made from him, and then the rest of it gets to a point where I don't really know the words anymore. So it's like I've got a bit of Greek in me. This is not even relevant. I just wanted to flex. That's guys. I'm sorry. That's the one time I'm going to flex my Greek reading. Let me just check how close I was with some of those translations. Yeah, all things were made by him. I think what I said was all things were made on account of him. So yeah, I translate it a bit more literally because that's how we were taught in GCSE. But yeah, pretty cool. I just felt like flexing, but let's get on with the video now. So another one of the questions I asked in that previous video was about translations. And this is something which I'd kind of heard before, and then someone emailed it me, which is like the Quran is perfect in Arabic. So the actual Arabic is perfect, but the translation can have errors in theory, and or it can lose meaning. Because another thing I've heard is Arabic seems to be a very like diverse language in the sense that it has a lot more words. I don't know how many words English has or Arabic has, but it has a lot more words, which means you can use a specific word which might have a specific nuance, and then when you translate it into the English, you might lose that nuance because we don't have as broad's are probably a better word. We don't have as broad a vocabulary. That's my understanding of it. So with that information, my sort of goal is going to be, I'm going to try and use reliable translations, okay, and refer back to the original Arabic where clarity is needed, okay. So when I was asking about the specific translations, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, which is the copy that I have, mixed opinions on it. Some people said it was fine, some people said it wasn't great and it's not reliable. Everyone who responded said Sahih International was good. And the key thing here is I've learned how to change the translation on Qur'an.com. I didn't know how you could change translation, but someone told me how to do it. So for now, what I'm going to do is when I'm going through it, I'm just going to use a couple of translations at the same time, because then just hopefully there's the highest chance that I'm not reading anything inaccurately. And as I said, if there's like specific, like what does this word specifically mean, I'll try and refer back to the original Arabic just where we can have that clarity. So that's what we do with those translations. Now, there were two more interesting points which I got from the emails, comments, and messages, which I wanted to include in this video because I want this to be something which we're just thinking about, and well, I'm personally thinking about as we go through the rest of the Quran. The first one is, and this one I hadn't really heard before, is apparently across the world the Quran is preserved letter by letter. So there's one guy who in an email, he explained it's been unchanged for 1,400 plus years. Wherever you go in the world, it's the same exact book, letter for letter. Okay. A bit later in the email, he said, in Islam, there's only one version of the Quran, and Muslims from Morocco to Indonesia all pray in the same direction, believe the same fundamentals, and recite the same scripture word for word. Okay, in another email, the Quran has been preserved in the same language, Arabic, which was revealed to the Prophet 1,400 years ago, meaning we have the exact same copy of the Quran, letter by letter. Okay, and I believe a lot of that might come from Surah 59. This seems to be a good surah for, which is, indeed it is we who have sent down the message, and indeed we will be its guardian, or in other translations, we will assuredly guard it from corruption. Okay, so this is definitely interesting, something I want to think about. I'm not going to cover it too much today because this sort of stuff doesn't pop up too much in the Surah 2, but it's something to keep in mind. Is apparently the Quran is preserved letter by letter across the world. That's an assertion being made here. Also, Google Gemini said the same sort of thing. According to the mainstream Islamic belief, the Quran has been perfectly preserved letter by letter across the world since its revelation to Prophet Muhammad. So that's just summarizing. Most Muslims, I guess, would think it's been preserved letter by letter across the world. Just a little note here on using AI. I am using a lot of Google Gemini when I'm getting a lot of questions about Islam, but it's like I'm doing it in a careful manner, in the sense that I'm not going to just type into Google Gemini, is Jesus God? because that just wouldn't be helpful, because it's going to be biased in one way. It's either going to say like, oh, we don't know, and here are some beliefs, and it's not going to help anyone, or it's going to be biased and it's going to say a certain thing. What I'm using for Google Gemini is more like, just give me information. So it's like when I'm using stuff like AI, I'm not using it in a stupid way where I'm asking it for like opinions on something. It's more like, give me this information. What verse does this say this? Where does it say this? So it's more, rather than opinions, which I'm not going to get opinions from AI because they could end up being biased. It's more just getting that information from AI. So that's how I'm using AI as I go through. And by the way, this Notion document, like with all of them, is going to be in the description because I want people to sort of be doing the research as I'm going through. As I said in that initial video, I'm not a teacher. I'm not teaching anything here. I'm just a student. Don't take my word for anything. I could be right, I could be wrong. But all the links for everything, all the notes, they're going to be in the description. So everything I'm saying, don't take my word for it. Go do your own research. Okay. And then another thing that got mentioned in the email was that there's no contradictions in the Quran. And then there's a bit here which Surah 4 we'll get to a bit later, but just to sort of bring it forward. Then do they not reflect upon the Quran? If it had been from any other than Allah, they would have found within it much contradiction. So what that's saying is, that's almost like a bit of a test, which is saying, if there's much contradiction in it, then it's not from Allah, it's not of divine authorship. But if there isn't contradiction, then you can trust that it's from Allah. So this was something that, again, I really appreciate this email because I didn't know this. Someone sent me an email and they said, this is a common theme in the Quran. Allah challenges the reader to think and ponder on its verses. If it was man-made, it surely would have contradictions. So as you go through this series, I encourage you to try to find any. Okay, so I really appreciate that. So that's sort of a mindset on me going through, and as I'm reading the Quran, is trying to find these contradictions. Because apparently there shouldn't be any, well, technically here it's saying there shouldn't be many. It's not saying there shouldn't be any, I don't think. But it's saying there shouldn't be many contradictions. So if I start finding many contradictions, we're going to have a problem. But obviously here I'm being challenged that, yeah, go try find any, you probably won't. That's the sort of sense I got from this. So that was really interesting. And those are 2 points. I'm not going to cover them too much today because they're not going to be too relevant. But it's like, these are going to be sort of principles that we're going to be taking through the whole thing. That's why all these things are going to be noted, because it means when we get to like Surah 4, Surah 5, Surah 6, we can come back, oh, in Surah 2 it said this, in Surah 1 it said this, and all this sort of thing. So that's why the Notion document is going to be super helpful for me anyway. So, these are interesting points here. I've kept them in mind whilst going through Surah 2, and I've continued to do so throughout the Quran. So there's one more thing I wanted to cover before we dive deep into the Surah today, which was, it was just a new Bible verse that I saw that I hadn't seen before, and I just thought I'd share it. And it's a verse on having a questioning attitude. So it's in Acts 17:11. These, and this is talking about in Berea. These in Berea were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. Okay, and what that's saying is, it's not just, okay, blindly accept a faith or blindly accept a belief. It's like, go and question it, go and challenge it. Search those scriptures daily and question it to see if it's actually true. Okay? And that sort of links into here. It's not just like, hey, don't just go and accept the Quran. Like, the guy could have emailed me and said, oh, and just the Quran's true, just trust it. He's sort of challenging me. Go and question it, go and challenge it, go and ponder on it, and then you'll be able to see it. Okay, so that's what I hope you guys can have when you're going through whatever scripture it is, the Quran, the Bible, whatever, is go in with that questioning attitude. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going in with the questioning attitude, with the Bible, with the Quran, trying to understand it, searching the scriptures daily. Today's like, by the way, today's like Friday of like the Easter like long weekend. So I'm off on the Friday, got the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and then it's bank holiday on the Monday as well. So all of these 4 days I'm just dedicating to like reading the Quran, reading the Bible, getting videos out. So basically I've spent whole of today. It's about like 8 p.m. or something. I've literally spent the whole of the day since I've been awake preparing this video, going through the notes and all this sort of thing. So I'm searching the scriptures daily for the next 4 days straight. And yeah, hopefully we can get a few videos out. So long introduction, but obviously I just wanted to cover those things. Let's jump into it. So key points from the passage. Let's come to the passage. Okay, just from briefly researching, I believe this is some sort of like code that some of the surahs have at the start, and they don't really know what it means. That's what I seem to get from that. And as you can see here with Qur'an.com, I've worked out how you can get multiple translations. So we have that here, the multiple translations. Okay. So this is the book about which there is no doubt, a guidance for those conscious of Allah. Okay, or in its guidance, sure, without doubt, to those who fear Allah. So question number one I was asking. to myself when I was reading this. How would you describe the Quran? Well, the Quran describes itself as without doubt and sure in its guidance. Okay, so this was something we talked about last time. The without doubt, this is giving us this impression that the Quran, which has been backed up by sort of the people who are commenting, sending me emails, the Quran is incorruptible, the word of God doesn't need to be changed, all this sort of thing. It's what you want to be following. Okay, it's without doubt and sure in its guidance. And now, okay, what is that guidance for? Well, that guidance presumably is the same guidance that it mentioned here. The guidance is the guidance to guide you along the straight path, okay, which we talked about. That was what we talked about a lot in the previous episode, okay. And in particular, though, it doesn't just say, oh, this is just guidance, this is guidance, this is guidance. It said who this guidance is for. It's a guide for a certain group of people, a guidance for a certain group of people. In its guidance, sure, to a certain group of people, okay. So the next question is, which group of people is this Quran for? Okay, that's what we're going to move on to the next question. And this is what the next couple of verses answer, is essentially establishing the criteria. This is the Quran, which is without doubt, and it's guidance for a certain group of people. And to be this certain group of people, you have to meet these criteria. Okay, what is the criteria? A guidance for those conscious of Allah, who believe in the unseen, establish prayer, and spend out of what we have provided for them. And who believe in what has been revealed to you, and what was revealed before you, and of the hereafter they are certain. Okay, so let's go through these criteria then. So it's people who fear Allah. It's people who believe in the unseen. Now, from Ibn Kathir, the unseen seems to be like things that you can't see, in the sense like Allah, you can't see him, or his angels, you're not going to see him, or like, for example, his books. Like, you can obviously see his books, but you didn't like see them being made or anything, or you didn't like see how it was. For example, the Quran, I believe it was partly revealed through like the angel Jibril, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that, but like, you didn't see that process happening to the Prophet back in like 600, 700 AD or something. The last day, paradise, fire, or hell, you obviously can't see those things, and all this sort of thing. So believing in the unseen, to me, from my understanding, that's just believing in all the like religious stuff, right? I think that's the way to think about it. It's also for people who are steadfast in prayer. It's for spending out of what we have provided for them, which I'll talk about a bit in a second. It's believing in the revelation sent to them. Okay, so we can come here. So it's for people who believe in what has been revealed to you, okay, or believe in the revelation that's sent to them. That's the Quran. Okay, that's talking about the Quran. The Quran is for people who believe in the revelation that's been sent to Muhammad, which is the Quran, right? So obviously the Quran is for people who believe the Quran. That makes sense, right? I realize that sounded sorry. I have a thing where I always sound sarcastic, but I'm not sarcastic. It's like I'll tell the truth and people will think I'm lying because I'm like smiling or something, but I like to smile, but I was being serious there. And then the next one is, and what was revealed before you. And that seems to be the Torah and the Injil. And this is something I didn't know until I sort of started finding out about Islam, is I thought it was just belief in the Quran and that's it, and then just ignore the Torah, the Bible, the Gospel, the Injil, whatever. But that's not what it says here. It says here, the Quran is a book of guidance for those who believe in what was revealed before you, which is the Torah and the Injil. So the Quran is for people who do actually believe the Torah and the Injil. So it sounds like Islam is not just believing in the Quran, it's believing in the Torah and the Injil and the Quran. And the Quran is sort of like a third version. Or I don't know if version is the right word, but it's just like the third book, and you still have to believe in the first two. Okay, so that's interesting. And also a certain of the hereafter. Okay, I think this means being certain of the existence of the hereafter. So that means, for example, if like you're atheist, you might be like, oh, good, does God exist? No, he doesn't exist. No, heaven doesn't exist. How does it exist? When I die, I'm going to die, and I'm going to die, right? And that's it. But then, for example, you might become a Christian and realize, no, God does exist, and when we die, we're going to go to heaven or hell, right? And I believe that's what it means here. It's about being certain just of the existence of judgment or heaven or hell, paradise afterwards. Initially, I thought this meant the Quran is for people who are certain of the hereafter and certain of their place in heaven. But I don't think it means that. I don't think it's saying the Quran is for people who are certain about going to heaven. It's just for people who are certain that they will either go to heaven or hell. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think it's that. I don't think it's about being certain your place in heaven. It's just being certain that heaven and hell is a real thing that you're going to have to go to at some point, and you're probably striving towards heaven. Okay, so those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 criteria that this Quran is for. This book is for people who match those 7 attributes. Now, the key thing I noticed here is the use of and. And. So that means you have to follow all of them, right? I believe. It's for people who fear Allah, or you're steadfast in prayer, or you believe in the revelation sent to them, or you believe in the revelation sent before them. And if one of those matches, then that's the Quran's for you, you're a Muslim, whatever. It's all of them. So what that tells me is, if you fear Allah, you believe in the unseen, but you're not steadfast in prayer and you don't spend out what we've provided for them, then the Quran's not for you. And like, if the Quran's not for you, the assumption I'm then making is you're not a Muslim, or you're not a good Muslim. That's sort of the leap I'm making there. But if you do those things but not these, the Quran's not for you, you're not a Muslim. And then similarly at the same time, if you do all this stuff, you fear Allah, you're steadfast in prayer, you believe in the Quran, but then you don't believe in the Torah and the Injil, the Quran's not for you, you're not a Muslim. So that was a key thing I got from this. It's an and. So if you're not believing in the Torah or the Injil, you're directly going against this, right? And it just, again, sort of backs it up here. Those are upon right guidance from their Lord, and it is those who are the successful. It's just sort of backing up this criteria. This is what it is. This is the correct guidance. This is the correct guidance. You need to fear Allah, believe in the unseen, be steadfast in prayer, spend out of what we've provided for them, believe in the revelation sent to them, the Quran, and believe in the revelation sent before the Torah and the Injil, and be certain of the existence of the hereafter. And that's sort of like a step-by-step, I guess, or more of a criteria, okay, from what I can understand. So this bit here, it says, the people who do those things, it's those who are the successful. Now, what does that mean? If you follow these, and it's those who are going to be, and you're going to be successful if you follow these, and if you follow this right guidance, which is, like I said, the guidance along the straight path and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if this means success in life, in like worldly things, or it means it's going to be success in the hereafter. And it is those who are successful. And I think this is something we're going to cover later, is like how to get to heaven in Islam. But that's what I'm not sure about at the moment. I'm not sure if this means if you follow this, you're going to have a good, like you're going to gain fruits and it's going to be good in this world, or if it means you're going to gain heavenly rewards, or you're going to go to heaven or whatever. Not sure about that one. Okay. So, question to everyone watching, especially to any Muslims who are watching before we move on to the next one. Do you follow the Torah and the Injil and the Gospel? Because it says here, if you don't, the Quran's not for you. You're not a Muslim. So that's the question. If you haven't read them before, I would recommend getting the King James version. So that's the version I have. I've done a lot of research, which I think I'll make a whole separate video on the channel on it, but I'll link all the bits of research in that video, which explain why this is like the reliable version of the Bible. But it says, like it says in your Quran, to believe in the revelation of the Torah. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, I believe, and then the Injil, the Gospel. I'm not sure if that's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or it's more like Romans and Revelation. I'm not really sure, but the Gospel will be in here. So I'd recommend that book. That's the exact version I have on Amazon. Okay. Now, going through this taught me something that I didn't realize. So when I first saw spend out of what we've provided for them, I saw one thing that referred to this as like zakah or zakat, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which we were taught back in the day. And I initially thought it was referring to that, but apparently that was revealed later. Okay, and this is what sort of made me realize the Quran wasn't revealed in the order it was given. Okay, whereas, for example, the Bible, you take the New Testament. The New Testament is more or less in the order because you start off with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which is like the life of Jesus, and then Acts, which is sort of after Jesus, and then like you get Romans, which is later, and then Thessalonians, which is later, and then you get to Revelation, which is even later. It seems like the Quran's in a different order. So I thought his Revelation order I found, yeah. So what we're in now, which is to the cow, al-Baqarah, is actually all the way down here. Where are we? Yeah, it's all the way down here. So it sounds like this is sort of key to know, I guess. So it sounds like the prophet got a lot of revelations in Mecca, and a lot of those are shorter. And then there was the Hijrah, which he migrated to Medina, and these are later revelations, and these are longer and this sort of thing. Okay, and I know we're gonna in future videos get onto the topic of like what's it called, abrogation, where like verses, what's the phrase? Verses, it's like overwrite, where verses like overwrite previous scripture and all that sort of thing. So, and that's when this will be super important. So that was really good to know. I didn't know that at all, but that was good to find out from this. So yeah, this initially thought it was referring to zakah, this spend out of what we provided for them, but that was actually revealed much later. I believe that was revealed in chapter 9 all the way down here. So in 2, this was more just sort of generally, it was just sort of generally saying, be thankful to Allah because He's the one who's providing for you in terms of money, and then when you're spending it, just sort of be generously and do it for good causes. Okay, so I was saying I've learned the Quran's revelation order. Okay, right, so let's move on to the next bit. So that bit there from 2 to 5 was talking about believers. And from when I've been going through commentaries and researching this, basically this first section of Surah 2 is talking about 3 distinct groups. Okay, so the first one, 2 to 5, which we've just talked about, are the believers. Okay, it's talking about the believers. This is who believers are, what they do, and they're on the right guidance. Okay, and then the other 2 groups it goes through is the disbelievers. That's going to be Surah 2, 6 to 7. Indeed, for those who disbelieve, it is all the same for them, whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not believe. Allah has set a seal upon their hearts and upon their hearing, and over their vision is a veil, and for them is a great punishment. Okay, so that's the disbelievers, and then there's the hypocrites, and the hypocrites get a lot of talking about. So they go from verses 8 to verses 20. That's talking about the hypocrites. So let's go through these. So the believers in that first bit seem to be, those 7 criteria which are all required, as we've discussed before. And then the disbelievers, it says here, disbelievers, that they are going to receive a great punishment. So presumably, I guess that's referring to hell. If you're a disbeliever, you're going to receive a great punishment from Allah for rejecting the faith, being a disbeliever. I just found this interesting, just reading this bit. There's kind of a similarity here because it talks about Allah sealing their hearts and their hearing. Where is that? That's here. Putting a seal upon their hearts. That's quite similar actually to in the Bible where God talks about hardening hearts. So for example down here it says, therefore hath He mercy on whom He will have mercy, and whom He will sort of hardeneth who He wants to hardeneth, basically. So He'll just harden people's hearts if He wants to. And also there's various things in Exodus. I'm not too as familiar with the Old Testament as I am with the New Testament, but there's a lot of things here about sort of Pharaoh hardening the hearts. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's hearts that He would not let the children of Israel go. That was just a sort of similarity I saw between Islam and Christianity there. So that's the disbelievers receiving a great punishment. And then there's the hypocrites. And the hypocrites, if we come down to 8 to 20, they will receive a painful punishment. Okay? And for them is a painful punishment. They will suffer a painful punishment. So similarly like the disbelievers, it looks like believers are going to go to heaven, disbelievers hell, and hypocrites hell, receiving that painful punishment. And in here it gives a lot of examples about being a hypocrite, and there's a lot of different ways to sort of be a hypocrite. And the first example is the most obvious way of being a hypocrite, which is people who say we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. They deceive Allah and those who believe, but actually they're just deceiving themselves. So that's the first example there, and there's a bunch of examples down here. And actually, if I bring out this document, this is what Gemini did for me. It put it all together into like a sheet, which is like there's like sort of 8 different, could be 7, but 7 or 8 different characteristics for being a hypocrite. So for example, one of them is, where is it? Oh yeah, people who say, when they are told, do not spread corruption in the land, they reply, we are only peacemakers. Indeed, it is they who are the corrupters, but they fail to perceive it. Okay, so it's when you're saying you're a peacemaker, but actually you're a corrupter. So for example, when you say you come in peace or something, or it's peaceful, and you're actually a corrupter. Okay, and there's those other examples there in the sheets as well. I've linked it in the Notion, so you can go and have a look at these and just see if any of these match you I hope they don't, because obviously you don't want to necessarily be a hypocrite apparently, because you'll receive a painful punishment. But these are ones I want to keep on mind. So these are sort of the Quranic definitions of what it means to be a hypocrite, and you obviously don't want to be a hypocrite because you're going to receive a painful punishment. So that's just interesting to find out about. So I've put some of those definitions there and on that Google Sheets as well. So again, one more similarity is sort of there's a similarity between being willfully deaf, dumb, and blind, and also suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. This is something it talks about in the Bible, where we all sort of know deep down that God exists, and we know about morals, and we have a conscience and all this sort of stuff, but it's like we suppress the truth and unrighteousness. So it's in us, but we just suppress it ourselves out of whatever it is, pride, arrogance, and all this sort of thing. And that's similarly to being sort of, they are willfully dumb, deaf, and blind. Okay, so once I've gone through this and understand that, okay, when it's talking about sort of, when you hear about Islam, okay, so if, for example, you've never heard about Islam, you wouldn't go into these things, into these categories, because you're not a believer, you're not a disbeliever, because you're not rejecting because you didn't know it was a thing. You're not a hypocrite because you didn't know it was a thing. If you hear about Islam, there's those three groups, and the question I wanted to ask myself was, what category do I fall into? And initially, when I thought that question, I thought I would go into hypocrite, just because it seemed to me that this one probably matched to me. Because I'm not claiming faith. I'm a Christian. I'm not claiming that. I'm not trying to deceive anyone. I mean, maybe I have a disease. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not trying to spread corruption. I'm not really mocking anyone. I don't think I'm being spiritually blind or intellectually blind, because like I said in the previous video, I'm trying to go into this with intellectual honesty and actually understand the truth. I'm trying to seek the truth here. And I'm not wavering and stuck with self-interest or fear or anything like that. So I initially thought, okay, that description actually matches with me. Maybe from the perspective of Islam, I'm choosing error over guidance because I've chosen Christianity, I've chosen Christ, right? But that being said, when I did a bit more research, it's a bit different between the disbelievers and the hypocrites. So hypocrites is actually specifically for Muslims, so it's people who conceal belief while outwardly claiming belief, whereas disbelievers is just people who genuinely reject Islam in their heart. So like it said here on Gemini, the hypocrites is people who outwardly show belief and mix with believers. I don't outwardly show belief, so I can't be a hypocrite. I'm more likely to be a disbeliever. I believe I'm more likely to be a disbeliever. Although that being said, I don't think my heart is necessarily sealed against it, because like I'm here making this series and actually investigating it properly. So maybe I don't really know. I feel like I would count as a disbeliever. Okay, I think I count as a disbeliever, because yeah, I've sort of rejected Islam because I am a Christian, right? And I'm finding out more about it, but yeah, we'll see. I'm learning as this series goes. Hypocrisy seems to be more serious than disbelief, okay? Because you can just come to the text itself, and disbelief is verse 6, verse 7, it's just 2. But then on hypocrisy, there's 13. It goes all the way down to 20. So there's 6.5 times more verses condemning hypocrisy, okay? This is likely due to hypocrisy is like active deception, like you're deceiving other people. There's also internal contradiction. I guess it's sort of like, if you're a disbeliever, it is what it is. You're going to hell. See you later. Is what it is. Nothing they can do about it. Whereas hypocrisy is like, this guy's actively doing evil and trying to spread it because he's sort of deception, seeking personal gain or to harm believers. So it seems like hypocrisy is even worse than disbelief, which is why you don't want to end up displaying any of these characteristics or being in this situation, because there will be a painful punishment. Okay, and then I was thinking about this. Okay, different religions then, how does this work? So believers, the people who are believers is obviously good Muslims. Disbelievers will be Christians, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, agnostic, atheists who know about Islam. So if you know about Islam and you're one of these, it means you're a disbeliever because you actively rejected faith. That's why I'm a disbeliever, right? And then there's the hypocrites who, like I said, I thought I was initially a hypocrite, but it turns out that's specifically referring to Muslims, but it's like bad Muslims. So like Muslims who like I said, conceal disbelief, okay, or they're seeking to deceive. Or this sort of thing, okay? And then also there's the people who don't know about Islam yet. So if there's some random person who like lives in like a village and they've never heard about Islam, don't think they're not a believer, they're not a disbeliever, they're not a hypocrite, because they haven't actively rejected faith and all this sort of thing. So that's sort of separate from those three groups, okay? So one of the things I'm really interested in is soteriology. Now, I didn't know this was a word until today, but I'm just sort of interested in salvation and how sort of salvation works in different religions. So from what I can tell from this basic, just first sort of 20 lines of this surah, it seems like, and it's reading between the lines a tiny bit, but it seems like believers, if you follow those 7 things, you're going to go to heaven. Disbelievers and hypocrites, you're going to go to hell. And then people who don't know about Islam is unknown so far. Because like I said, this first 20 verses, it's only talked about the believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites. It hasn't talked about the people who don't know about Islam yet. Okay, so that's something that will be good to find out as we continue going through, is what happens to people if you don't know about Islam. So if you were born, you lived your life, you never heard about Islam, and then you died, how would that work? Would you get mercy? How would all this sort of thing work? Okay, would you just go straight off to hell, or would God be merciful and help you go to heaven? So that's something I'm looking to understand, because it's one of the fields of theology I'm most interested in. Okay, so in terms of how believers get to heaven, from my understanding, it seems like faith and works so far. So faith is sort of, that's like the belief. Having faith that Allah is, I guess, well, I'm not really sure because it hasn't covered it, but I don't know, the faith, whatever faith it needs to have, like the faith that Allah is one and He's all powerful and this exists and all this sort of thing. So it's just something to do with belief. It hasn't covered much what you need to believe in particular yet, but I guess it's something to do with belief. But it also seems to be works, okay? Because like I said, it's specifically set up here that the Quran is for people who are steadfast in prayer. It's like if you're not actively doing prayer, if you're not steadfast in prayer, the Quran is not for you. And then that extends to, are you not a good Muslim then? So whereas, for example, Christianity is purely faith. So in Christianity, people are saved through faith, right? So for by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So with Christianity, you don't have to do anything, because there's nothing you can do, because we're all sinners, we're all deserving of going to hell. And that's why Jesus Christ came down, because He was God, and He lived a perfect life, and He died, and that meant He took 100% of our sins. Okay, we should have got the punishment, but He took 100% of our punishment, which means the 0% left for us means we can go to heaven. So we all deserve hell, but Jesus took 100% of our punishment, which means we can go to heaven. So it means that's done. It is finished. That's the completed work of Christ, means we can go to heaven. So that's what Christianity is. It's all about faith. It's not about anything you do. There's nothing you can do that can get you to heaven, because even the best thing you do is the equivalent of a dirty rag to God. Because sin is sin, and the wages of sin is death. It's not of works, lest any man should boast. It's all through faith. It's all through Jesus. From what I can tell, it's different in Islam. It does seem to be faith and works, which means you have to have your faith in Allah. And again, I don't know how that works yet, but we'll find out. And then you have to do works, certain things. We'll cover them briefly, prayer and giving, but maybe we'll get into like, okay, do you have to do Ramadan to get to heaven? Do you have to do the pilgrimage to go to heaven? I don't know. We'll go and find that stuff out. But this is like, with this series, I'm just going to be learning more and more and more and more and more. And like I said, you guys commenting down below, sending me any emails and all this sort of stuff is really helpful, because if I've got anything wrong, you guys can let me know, or if I've like understood it correctly, also let me know as well, just so I know I'm on the right path. But I think that's what my understanding is so far. It seems to be something to do with faith and works. Not sure exactly what the faith is you have to have, not sure exactly what works you have to do to get to heaven, but it seems to be those. And like I said, we'll try and build up a bigger and bigger picture of how salvation works in Islam as we go through. Okay, now let's cover this one. So this is the fourth and final point for today's video. So we got through about 22 verses, of Surah 2. Allah is Lord and has no equals. So, O mankind, worship your Lord, or your guardian Lord. Okay, so that's referring to Allah as Lord. And also in 2:22, it says, do not attribute to Allah equals while you know there's nothing similar to Him. So there's nothing equal to Allah. Okay, those are just two key sort of principles, two key doctrines that I know are going to come in useful later when we go through different ones. Okay, and I just wanted to give a bit of food for thought now to sort of end this video. And I think this is going to be more important when we get into Surahs 4 and 5. Okay, but I just wanted to show you what it says in the Gospel and in the Injil, which, like, the Injil is the word for it, I guess. I think it's the Arabic. Which, again, just to come back here, The Quran is for people who believe in the revelation sent before their time, the Torah and the Injil. Okay, so we believe in these revelations, supposedly, if you follow the Quran. So what does it say in these revelations, the Injil? Well, it says this, John 20:28-29. And Thomas answered and said unto him, My Lord and my God. Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed. So Thomas is talking to Jesus, and Thomas has just referred to Jesus as my Lord and my God. And does Jesus say, no, hang on, why are you calling me that? I'm not Lord, I'm not God, I'm not. He said, Thomas, because you've seen me, you have believed. So Jesus has essentially accepted worship as Lord. Right? Another one here is, this is Jesus speaking, I believe, but let me just double check. Yeah, and he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, the Son of Man. Well, who's the Son of Man? Does Jesus claim to be the Son of Man? Well, yeah, he does, because it says here, the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power. So Jesus says he is the Son, and he says the Son is the Lord of the Sabbath. So Jesus is claiming to be the Lord of the Sabbath. So Jesus is claiming to be Lord, which we've just seen from this surah that Allah is the Lord. So that's very interesting. Okay, I'm not going to comment on it too much now because, like I said, we're very early in Surah 2. This is going to come up more relevant in Surah 4 and 5. But it's very interesting how the Quran is calling Allah Lord, and in the Injil, Jesus is claiming to be Lord. There's other parts of the New Testament as well, like in Acts, Romans, Corinthians, Philippians, Revelation. In particular, like Revelation, and he, Jesus, hath on his venture and on his thigh on his thigh. Why did I say that? On his thigh, a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Okay, so is Jesus Lord? Interesting. Okay, and like you can just follow this logic right now. According to the Quran, like we just said there, Allah is Lord. According to the Quran, the gospel is trustworthy. Okay, that's what it said in Surah 2, what was it, 2:4 or something like that, 2:4. And according to the gospel, Jesus is Lord. Therefore, you just connect the dots. Allah is Jesus. Okay? And that's literally just connecting the logic there. That's just connecting the dots. I haven't done anything there. That's just pure like argument 1, argument 2, argument 3. Therefore, put that all together. Okay? And that's when that statement is going to become contentious, most likely, when we get to surahs 4, 3. I don't think it's 3, but it'll be surahs 4 and 5. Because I know bits about the future things that are going to come up, but like I'm studying it, going through the whole thing rather than just knowing like random things and stuff. But it's definitely something to keep in mind, that the Injil is supposed to be trustworthy, and the Injil is saying that Jesus is Lord. Okay, so that's what we've covered today in Surah 2. So we've got to verse 22. Next time we're going to continue from Surah 2:23, and the next thing we're going to cover is the first of the Quranic tests. Okay, so the Quran does this a couple of times. The Quran, and this is in particular the first time it happens in Surah 2:23 onwards. The Quran gives me a definitive true or false test about its divine authorship, and that's going to go in the next video. Will it pass its own test on its own divine authorship? That's going to be a really interesting video to see if the Quran can prove true or false about the divine authorship. If you're interested in that video, go click subscribe, and then you'll be notified when that one comes out. Okay? So for now, I'm going to leave it with just a couple of questions like I usually do, just to double check everything. So to anyone who's watching, do you believe in the gospel? Do you believe in the Injil? Okay? And if yes, why? If no, why not? And also, how close am I to how Muslims get to heaven? Like I said, I believe it's some sort of faith, some sort of works. We haven't covered the specific, but am I right? I'm just checking. It's not a completely faith-based religion, I don't think, like Christianity is, and it's not a completely works-based religion where there's no faith involved. It seems to be a mixture of both. Okay, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm not. That's what it seems to be. So if any of you guys are watching and you actually know, that would be great to just let me know, see if I'm on the right lines. And then also just that open question to everyone. Do you believe in the gospel? Do you believe in the Injil? These quotations that I've just put here, do you believe them? Do you believe that Jesus is Lord? That'd be really interesting to see in the comments below, or send me any emails if you want. Notion document is down below. Here are the references that I've used. So like I said, I'm not a teacher, I'm just a learner. Go do that research and don't take my word for anything. Go do your own research. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. Learned a lot today. And yeah, thanks guys for watching. When you are ready, go comment down below, and then I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.